Ginny Pierce is a professor of Latin American Studies in the Division of Peace Studies and the director of the International Center for Participation Studies here at the university. And so brings a wealth of experience to helping us facilitate this debate. Thank you very much. And now I will turn the venue over to her.
Thank you very much, and can I welcome everybody on behalf of the University and Peace Studies to this event. It's the longest day of the year. It's a hot day, it's a hot topic. I hope they'll have a heated discussion. Clearly heated discussions also need to be managed somewhat, so we thought we might have just a few little things we might agree to, everybody, in terms of the tone and the way we work together. I've taken some of these ideas from the Programme for a Peaceful City, which we've used over time. So there are things like, first of all, it's okay to be confused. Okay? There isn't a right and wrong. Often confusion is the best way to feel, and there's no problem with that. Listen to each other and be prepared to change your mind. Right? Which is a very hard thing. We find that in the Programme for a Peaceful City. It's the hardest thing for academics to change their mind. But anyway, it's a good idea. And then if some people like to speak a lot, others don't speak very much. Because we've got lots of time constraints here, we're really going to have to limit everybody in terms of speaking. So please, you know, you can only speak for around 3 minutes. Right? The panel are only going to speak for 3 minutes. And we'll have to say that when we go back to the audience, please make your interventions short, because we started half an hour late. We're still going to go on to 8 o'clock rather than 7:30, which is the original time. We will end at 8 o'clock, but we do have to get through quite a few questions, and we've also got quite a large panel here. So I'm now going to introduce the panel to you so that you will get to know them. As you know, George Galloway is on his way, so he'll be coming here very soon. So if I could first of all introduce Jim Steinke, who is the Chief Executive of the Northern Refugee Centre, that promotes welfare of refugees, asylum seekers and vulnerable economic migrants. Benoit Musanzi wa Musango, if I get it right, has come on the panel because Beatrice Botomani couldn't be here, so we thank him particularly because he's really stepped into the breach. And Benoit is chairman of the Refugee Forum and also the director of the Conflict Resolution Centre in Bradford district. We're very pleased to have him. Mark Taylor is Executive Director of Taylor Partnerships, which specialises in immigration and asylum law. So we will have a legal perspective there. And Jason Smith is the UKIP Bradford District Chairman and prospective candidate for Queensbury. So can everyone welcome the panel? So the format of the event is that people have sent questions in and people have written questions now, and they've been selected, and we have, I think we're going to get through round about 6 or 7. And I thought we could start off with one. There are two actually quite connected to the media. And I've got one here from Kevin Ritchie, and I thought we might start with that. Is Kevin here? Yeah. It's the Does the Panel Agree one.
Okay, yeah. Does the panel agree that it's time for politicians to take a more measured approach to the immigration debate as opposed to dancing to the tune dictated by the gutter press? And I'm thinking in particular of statements such as Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister, of British jobs for British workers, or the recent UKIP billboard campaign, Enough is Enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the format will be, I'm going to give each member of the panel 3 minutes to respond to that, and then we'll have a chance for the audience to come back on it. So I'll start here from the left with Jim. Would you like to respond to that one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I do kind of think that it's time for politicians to stop doing that, but also I would say that I think it's time for politicians to stop determining, I think, sometimes what's in the press as well, and I think that's partly what you were saying as well, where it works both ways. Clearly the kind of press is trying to do its job as it sees it, selling papers, etc. And I think there is a need to make a difference between the press in this country and some of the kind of TV media, where I think there is, I think that is far more balanced in my view, some of the TV stuff than what you get in the press. But I think the fundamental issue is that politicians have this sense that there's an electoral expediency in terms of, you know, you need to pick on something, you pick on migrants. It used to be asylum seekers. I mean, in terms of, you know, 10 years ago when I started in this field, it was every other third day there'd be a celebrity, a footballer and an asylum seeker story on the front of the papers. We've moved on from that, and EU migrants have now, on the whole, replaced that. The same nonsense, the same kind of assumptions being made, but ultimately that is being fed by politicians, I would argue, and I think there needs to be both the press and politicians need to call a halt to it.
Politicians and the press. Benoit, how would you respond to this?
I think that for in my side, I could say that yes, time has come for politicians to find out how to take a measured approach in this issue of immigration, because in most of cases, decisions are taken, particularly in EU, are taken somewhere in Brussels, in a room, and these are people who maybe have no idea or no experiences about what it means for somebody to leave the land, to leave their relatives, to leave even their belongings, and to flee just to save life. In the UK, as in those who are in Brussels, many, even the ordinary population, many are people here who have never had the experience of war since World War II. So I call them new generation people. So I think politicians like all of us, ordinary population, we need to find out how we could think about that. So time has come, yes, for all of us, not only politicians.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, would you like to come in?
Seeing the Daily Bigot every day have overseas student ate my cat shock is a bit of a tiresome event at times. But actually, I'm not going to blame the press. I'm actually going to blame those people who think that the argument for refugees and asylum seekers and migration is an important one. Because to be honest, if that's the headline news and that's what's getting the coverage, then those of us who actually believe that there is a humanitarian, an economic and a decent case about migration, then we're failing in our duty in actually getting that story over there. I think we need to have a bit of a reality check about this and not blaming the press. That migration will always be, in one form or another, a hot political subject. In just the same way as politicians meddle with the health service and don't understand it. In exactly the same way, politicians will inevitably meddle with immigration. Whether you go back to 1971, whether you go to the swathe of legislation that came through in the noughties under Blair and the rather bad legislation that's coming through now. It's always going to be there. So if we accept that, because people are always going to move around, because migration is now bigger than the Industrial Revolution was. It's a huge issue. So let's grow up about it and say it is going to be a top issue. But if we're letting the bonkers brigade lead the debate, then we need to pull our socks up, get real with it, and put proper arguments to show what's going on. And if we're saying that the media are leading on bonkers stories, then we should look at the way that we're presenting our case, and perhaps we're not doing it correctly.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jason.
On the gentleman's specific point, he made a point about a UKIP poster, enough is enough. And what that was pointing out, what we're saying, we're not anti-immigration, so let's clear this up first of all. We're not anti-immigration, we're anti-mass unlimited immigration, and specifically from the European Union. That was the point that was made in that poster, and I don't consider that anyway a radical view at all. Opening the question of should we have unlimited borders to everybody who lives in the EU? You know, some people may think we do. I disagree, and for this reason, if we have unlimited immigration from the EU for hundreds of millions of people, what impact does that have? I'll ask you, sir, what impact does that have on the health service? What impact does that have on schools? on transport infrastructure, on jobs. Immigration is one issue, but that issue leads into many other issues. So we've not got to be afraid to discuss these. If you disagree, then it's fair enough. But let's not use this language where people are afraid to have discussion. This is why this discussion's happening today, because people have come together to have a rational discussion. On the main point about the media whipping up questions about immigration, I agree with the point you made. But I'll just give a really quick example. And this is a video that I saw a few days ago. And it was a video that was sponsored by the government. It was a video that was put out in Poland for Polish immigrants, sponsored by Eric Pickles, Eric Pickles' office. Really briefly, this video showed a Polish family who wanted to emigrate to the UK, and it was trying to deter immigrants. And what happened with this family? There was a man and a woman came. She worked in the health service. He was a labourer. The man eventually lost his job. This video said they ended up on the street. He was then beaten up by some British thugs, and he was ended up set alight and burned. So this is what the government's putting out. This is not what UKIP's putting out. This is not what the media's putting out. This is coming from the office of Eric Pickles, who used to be in Bradford. So I would say, I agree with what you're saying, sir, but let's look at what the government's putting out. I think that's quite a disgusting video. I would never want to see my party putting out a video like that. But this is what the government's doing. Rather than having the guts and the backbone to say, let's have a proper discussion about immigration, what they're doing is they're putting out, frankly, what I describe as a very disgusting video, saying that British people, if you come to Britain as an immigrant, you're going to get beat up and you're going to get set alight. So you've got to bear that in mind.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got some, strong opinions there. Would anybody in the audience like to come back? Maybe yes. Yeah.
Will Sutcliffe, Chair of Bradford City Sanctuary Group. I think it's interesting that it's fairly evident that stereotyping and prejudice are largely based on ignorance. And we find that as people encounter firsthand and meet refugees and asylum seekers, their opinions invariably change. I think it's significant that across the UK, the local media are generally far more sympathetic to asylum seekers and refugees because they actually meet them. Those sitting in the offices, no longer in Fleet Street, but whether they are, the national media very rarely encounter the people who they're writing these stories about. And I think the task of all of us is to create opportunities wherever we can, this is certainly what the City Sanctuary Movement seeks to do, to enable those encounters, to enable the stereotypes and all the rubbish to be dispelled, by people actually meeting flesh and blood and encountering each other in person.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes.
Microphones. Thank you. Barry Clark, I'm a solicitor in Bradford. I think that politicians have a great deal of responsibility because they continually misuse figures and misrepresent the true situation to serve their own political ends, and that then gets picked up by the media, which is only too happy to use it. One of the ongoing examples of this is the urgency that the government have got about getting net immigration down to under 100,000, and in order to do that, firstly they are causing enormous damage to educational institutions by stopping foreign students coming here. We shouldn't be counting them as immigration, net immigration. Students come here to study, and by and large the majority of them return to their own countries at the end of that. But as a result of this, they are also stopping people coming here to join families. Husbands and wives are being separated for years on end, and family life is being destroyed, and all to serve political objectives. And politicians of all parties should stop feeding into this and stop trying to outdo each other. Starting fears about how many Romanians and Bulgarians might arrive here on the 1st of January next year does nothing to help that. The media also needs to take a more responsible attitude, but I do think it has to start with some politicians.
Yeah, we have one feedback there, and then I'll take a couple more.
I agree entirely with Barry. If you take the student issue, it's a classic case. Because what they've done is they've said we're going to cut the number of migration down to below hundreds of thousands. So what they've decided to do is to create this student visit visa route, which when in 2009 only 20-odd thousand people came into the country as student visit visas. It's now over 400,000. But they don't include that in the figures because they have a visa for less than 1 year. So actually when you see the figures saying net migration's coming down, it's a complete fallacy. They've just shifted the numbers. And I think that the point is, and I hope Barry agrees, that actually politicians are talking about, and this is what's getting into the media, they're talking about something they just don't know anything about. And if you were to sit down with anybody in the Home Office even, anybody who's had the displeasure of having to go to Waterside Court and meet some of the excuses of civil servants that are employed there, you would actually, if you were to ask them any question about immigration, an issue about it, they wouldn't know. They don't understand. And that's what's getting through to the press. So I entirely agree, and that's why the battle is for people of us that do know and do care about it. We've got to get the explanation out there to actually start educating people.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple more, but just remind everybody of the question, which is a measured approach. The questioner wants to know whether it's time for politicians to take a more measured approach. What is a measured approach? I think is coming out for me. So yes, and then, yeah.
Do members of the panel believe that the long and short of it all, immigration is an actual fact, the flip side of the same coin as invasion? Thank you.
Okay, that's another question, but I'll park it for a minute and take a couple more, but we can come back to that. Yes.
Cheers. Thank you for the panel, for everybody coming here. I'm a big fan and proponent of what is now called evidence-based politics. Before, in olden times, it used to be called telling the truth. I just want to allude to what UKIP, the gentleman from UKIP has just done. Again, is the issue of discussing, contentious things like health tourism. Saying by having unlimited immigration puts a massive strain on the health service. And I was reading the UKIP website earlier today and was stating some massive figures regarding the NHS cost. The reality is it costs 200 million. Whilst this is truly a figure, it isn't the hot topic issue that it's supposed to be. So my point, my question is it a time that politicians back up any claims they make on immigration by true facts and figures? Just to come across, again, the figure that UKIP states regarding the over-the-top migration of Bulgarians and Romanians by next year. Migration Watch, which is massively credited as this far-right, even over-the-top organisation, estimate these figures at half of what UKIP are estimating. So is it time for evidence-based politics and politicians to measure what they say?
And maybe respond to the gentleman's question, is immigration the same as invasion? Okay? Yeah. Jason, go ahead.
Well, just to answer that gentleman's point then, he mentioned about UKIP putting out figures for Bulgarian and Romanian immigration, because basically next year we open our borders to Bulgarian and Romania immigrants. The point is, the answer to that question is very simple. Nobody knows how many people are going to come. The Labour Party...
They're all ready coming.
No, we're talking... The gentleman talked about extra people from Bulgaria and Romania. This is the question. And the answer to the question is, in the last wave of immigration, the Labour Party, the government of the time, suggested there would be tens of thousands of immigrants. Under Labour's watch, under those few years, we had 3.7 million people. So you could dispute the figures. Anyone can dispute the figures. The truth of the matter is, nobody knows how many people's coming. But this is the point. The point that we're making is, surely, as a country, as an independent country, surely it's up to our government to make the decision who comes into our country, and in as many numbers. Surely, as a sovereign nation, that is the choice of any nation to decide that. It's not a choice of an international government. If, for example, we had a referendum in the country, do you agree with unlimited immigration? I think I know what the answer would be. But if we have that referendum and the people come back and say to us, we're happy for total open borders, and the other question that was brought up earlier, the thing you mentioned about health service, if people want a total open door immigration policy to the EU or indeed to the world, Well, they'll have to take the consequences with that. You'll have to take the consequences. We won't have 1 million young people unemployed. We'll have much more. We'll have much more than that. We'll have a massively overburdened health service. And I would suggest that we won't have a health service with a total open borders to the EU and even further beyond. So you've got to weigh these questions up. Do you want to control your own borders or not?
Jason, I'm sorry.
Can I just, because Jim had already asked to come in, so can I ask Jim? Sorry.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that there is a kind of an issue about migration and the health service, because at the moment about 40% of doctors working within the NHS are actually all. You're right. Actually, if we stop migration, the health service will collapse. Thank you.
Okay, did you want a quick?
Are you questioning the
comment?
40%?
Can I just quickly answer that one?
Okay, there's a lot of hands up, and we've got to get on to another question. So I know this is a big hot moment, so maybe I will let you come back on that, and then you one final comment, and then we'll need to go on to another question. So, yeah.
The answer to the question is very, very simple. If we didn't have open door immigration in this country, and we trained our own people properly, we would have the doctors and nurses coming from this country. Because our education system's in such a state of disrepair, we haven't got people coming through in this country. And what the problem is, because the wages are so depressed in this country, the majority of our good doctors and nurses actually go abroad to work. So yeah, there is a problem with the health service, but the problem is we're exporting all our talented people to other countries, and we're getting cheap immigrants in it to do the job. That's the problem.
Okay. One more. Did you want to comment, or you?
I'm just a bit puzzled about this great open door thing that everybody's flooding in. I haven't really seen this.
Well, this is what's happening, I'm afraid.
No, well, you say this, but the only thing I see is I've just come back from London today, and if I took out all the migrant workers out of London, every hotel would close. And the jobs are being done because there are a lot of British people, not because they're uneducated, they don't necessarily want to work. And if we didn't have the migrant community, it wouldn't happen. But I think this great avalanche of people coming in, I haven't seen it. Actually, if you want to go and do the figure check, you'll see that a lot of the Eastern Europeans went back.
That's true.
Okay, can I just ask you to speak through the chair? I'm sorry, I know it'd be great if we could all have a sort of mass fight in here. So I think, is it all right if I take a couple more on this, because we'll have less questions, okay, just to get the organisers' view. So yeah, would you like to speak, and then yourself, now those three, and then we'll move on, yeah? I'll take the three, one after the other.
I'd just like to say that this country has a first-class reputation for taking in asylum seekers, refugees and immigrants. Starting with the Windrush migrants in the 1950s that came from the West Indies and helped actually staff the National Health Service and the transport industries in this country. And then we have migrants from India and Pakistan that came in to help in the mills in Lancashire and in Yorkshire, particularly in Bradford. And we've had Ugandan refugees come in from East Africa that were thrown out in the early 70s. We've had 3.5 million people come in, according to the census, officially in 10 years. And it seems to me we've done more than our level best as a country to accept these people. The fact is that we're almost bankrupt as a nation at the moment. The economy is in a parlous state. We've got 2.5 million people unemployed, and possibly as many as 1 million under the age of 25 without work. How can we keep an open door policy with that number of unemployed people? Surely we have to get the economy correct before we can have a policy of letting people come in again.
Okay, thank you. There's two more in this session, and I'll ask David to ask his question. Yeah. And you're next, yeah. We haven't yet answered the gentleman's question about is immigration equivalent to invasion, but we'll come back to it, I'm sure.
I'd just like to say there's a lot of people who are born in Britain who actually leave the country to go work abroad. I'd like to see the statistics on that. But for you personally, I would like to take you to take a DNA test to track your DNA, to see if you've got some immigration blood in you. You know, could refer to any sort of nation there. I would love to see you do that.
just what we're not anti-immigration, we're anti-mass immigration. Got to make that point.
Thank you. Welcome to George Galloway. We're at our hot point, and I'll bring you in when the next question asked. But we just
I've heard him saying that before, by the way.
That can't be true, George. Surely not.
It wasn't true then, and it isn't true now.
Jason, I'll give you another go at the end of these two and before the next question. So yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Tanvi Shahid, and thanks that Galloway has come, and it is related to the politicians and the media, as the question goes in the beginning. The thing is that I myself am a refugee, and if you limit your borders, if you want to control your borders by putting your hand like this, don't come. That is one approach. The other is try to reduce the tension at the source. Try to handle the push factor. There are two factors, push factors and pull factors. As regards push factors, British politicians, they can have much influence on those countries where push factors exist. But most of the time they shut their eyes because of their own political reasons. As regards media, that is also vested interest. They have vested interests. Many times they would not highlight the plight of those who are being persecuted at the source countries. They would just avoid those issues. But if you can address these two parts through the media and through the politicians, and I would refer to that part, it's not easy to leave your home. It's not easy to leave your belongings. You have emotional ties there. Don't think it is easy to do that. There are very strong, very, very strong push factors most of the time which force people to leave all their belongings and every ties which they have there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Give Jason just the right to respond because he's been asked about his DNA.
Well, I mean, just for that lady's information, I was married to a non-British woman for 10 years, so I've got nothing against anyone from another country. And on immigration, what you need to have is a controlled immigration policy. You know, it's up to, you know, if you want to have an unlimited immigration, that's up to you, but you're going to have to take the consequences of that on your jobs and on your health service. That's all I'm saying. If the people want to make that decision, they'll have to live with the consequences.
Did you ever deported?
Yeah.
No, she's still here as far as I know. She's
Ben
still around.
hasn't had a second go and he's just asked me if you could just come in. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to respond to your name again?
My name is Robert Ganti, ex-student in this university 35 years ago.
Because his question was, is immigration a natural factor or is it an invasion? What I could say is this, it's a natural fact. Why? Because let me go back to my background is from radiology. Before coming to peace and conflict resolution, first of all, I studied radiology. In atom, for those who have studied physics, if there is an electron which has left the atom, naturally that atom will not be in balance. To make the balance, it has to make naturally all they can to bring an electron from another atom. And in immigration terms, this is also happening naturally. When people have left, for example, let me give the example of the Congo I'm originally from. People have left, 6 million have been killed in the Congo out of 50, and many people have fled abroad, including to the UK. What is happening now, naturally, is I have heard that many British are now in the Congo. Why? It's naturally, people are going to replace those who have fled. So this is natural effect. It's not an invasion. It's naturally that is happening.
Thank you very much. Can I thank everybody so far, keeping to 3 minutes. Really appreciate what that. It's brilliant. David Odinukwe, I think, where's David gone? Yeah,